Hello, and welcome to another weekly reading. I find it funny and yet fitting that the post that I had prepped for today is all about setting your space for your readings, and I am out of my ordinary space. So my setup is not as, I want to say, maybe organized or controlled as normal, and yet there's always a way, even when you're not in your usual environment, to find things to create that space. So, as you can see, there are always oils with me wherever I travel, crystals as well. And I'm able to bring these things into the vignette that creates part of the energy vortex for those cards to come through with whatever is the right message for us. And this week I am really feeling the preparation of the two big Pisces planets to station retrograde. So the one will station over the weekend and the one only early the next week. And yet I really feel like that's a big part of our profile. And there's this very big shift happening. Actually, it's only happening next year, but I feel with these two Neptune planets going retrograde for the last time in Pisces, it's our last deep dive into the discipline, Saturn, and the ideals and the dreams, Neptune, around Pisces things, the collective, and where we've gone wrong in the collective and how we might want to shift that, where we have been disillusioned and where we might want to build a new dream, where we have lost discipline of the big picture and humanity as a whole, where we were trying rather for power instead of taking care of the all. That feels like a very strong theme. But remember, Pisces is the last sign of the zodiac. So what we're diving deep into now is also preparing us for stepping into Aries. And Aries is, how am I going to make changes in my own life for which I am responsible, and in so doing for the world. So this is our real sort of composting and preparing ourselves for that. So remember that this is a collective reading. You can pick a card between 1 and 4. The number that comes up or numbers that come up for you will give you a little extra personalized guidance. However, if you are looking for personal readings, please do check out the link below. Let's jump in. And here are our 4 cards for the week, and very powerful ones indeed. 2 major arcana, a king, and a very wise message that seems to have been coming up for us quite a bit lately with the 4 of Swords. We also only have one suit showing up, and that's Swords. And we are now in Cancer season, but we just came out of a very intensive energy portal of Gemini, which is very heady. And also Jupiter is still in Gemini for the better part of the next year. So there is still a lot of Gemini for us to deal with. And just as we have those 2 big planets, Saturn and Neptune, pushing into Aries, from Pisces to Aries next year, we also have Uranus beginning to push into Gemini next year. So there is also a level of what was Gemini season for me and how can I rest and nest with that? I've jumped straight into card number 4. How can I kind of consolidate what that is? Because next year, that same sort of feeling, that same bigness and like open portals in our brains, that's coming with Uranus in an intense way. So let's go back to the beginning. We start with the Strength card, and it's very ironic because the Strength card is going to be on the front slide of my very next post, and I don't even find these things surprising. Well, actually, I always find them surprising, but it's always more of a, why do I even find this surprising anymore? These things are just so obvious. It's like a thread that weaves when you start to follow symbolism and how it shows up for you in your life in many different ways. And I'm sure most of the time we don't notice it at all, but the more we begin to see it, the more obvious it is. And for me, these little breadcrumbs or these little golden threads always remind me that I'm on track, I'm on time, I'm on purpose, I'm exactly where I need to be, even through challenging situations, which are part of the process. We never graduate out of struggle. That's part of what we're here for. in our human experience. I find it interesting that this is the 8 card, which is even more potent this year because this is an 8 year at the numbers of the year 2024. And then this is the 9 card. It's the only upside down card we have, but it also tells me, just as I'm feeling into that, like really digging into the area of Pisces, preparing to move into Aries, we could, this is not anywhere near Pisces energy, but we might almost digging into it in order to move into the next one, which is not sort of yet baked. It's upside down. And this is more of a Leo energy, in fact. So the Strength card is very much about finding your courage, stealing your courage, pushing through when things get hard. And sometimes that courage isn't maybe what we've been conditioned to see as brave. Sometimes the courage is to be still in moments where you would have stood up. Sometimes it's to stand up in moments where you would have not. You know, it's oftentimes, where am I triggered by fear to not want to do something? That's where I actually need to step in. Within reason, of course. This does depend on, is my life at stake if I did this thing? Then maybe you would want to rethink it. But most of the time, wherever we feel the fear, that's where we actually need to move into that space. This is where I need to act in a way that I never did before. Whatever that is finding that courage for myself. You know, there's a deep healing energy that comes from this card, and there's a vulnerability that we need to be able to access. There's an open-heartedness that we need to be able to access to really embody the Strength card. And I think for me, that's a big part of what we're trying to do with card reading, and that's very much about that next post, is learn to embody the card, learn to understand the archetype on many different levels. And each time a card comes up for you, there will be another level. So don't worry, there's always another time to learn the lesson. And as we're jumping around this week for whatever reason, let's look at this card and this is the Hermit. So it's almost, because the cards go in a journey, the hero or the fool's journey turned hero's journey, they kind of do have a sequencing that's quite important. And so 8, learning the lessons of 8 steps us into 9. So when we found the space to be super courageous and strong, even when we don't feel it, and let's be honest, even those of us that to the outside eye, the super wealthy or the absolutely glamorous, or all of those kinds of people that we all look up to and aspire to be like, or many of us do, they also have fear. They also have challenge. Nobody feels strong all of the time. So when we've pushed through with getting to this 8 energy, the Strength card, and we've steeled ourselves, it's quite tiring, and we almost need a recalibration. And that's what the Hermit really talks to us about. It's like, okay, well, now you did all those things that you needed to do. You found your strength, you found your courage. Now you need to kind of sit in silence. You need to consolidate. You need to find the light within you, because the Leo or the Strength card is quite bright. It's like the sun. The sun is about strength within him, but everybody sees the sun shining bright. So we've come from a needing to actually do something that is visible to now I need to sit just with myself and realize that whether I am witnessed or whether I am alone, it is just as powerful. Now, because we did get this card upside down, it's kind of suggesting that maybe we haven't taken that time and we're feeling a little bit alone, isolated, lonely, unable to go into that internal cave and find the blessings and the beauty in that space, rather than just feeling misunderstood and isolated and alone. We need to find that confidence and that courage within ourselves. That way we can shine externally. So we need to naturally attract people into our lives, not need them in a way that makes us dim our light. And this is where we are moving towards when we get to that point of the reading. So we found our strength and courage. We're stepping into the scary spaces this week. And then we also want to remember the King of Swords is a very grounded, which is, I mean, he's an air guy, so grounding is not normally what you would think of, but because he's like wise in his air medicine at this point of his life, He's done the work. He's been scatterbrained. He's been easily distracted. He's been the Page of Swords. He's been the Knight of Swords. He's done the Journey of Swords. And now he sits there in his wisdom that sometimes stillness, which really does link to the Hermit, is the answer. And in many of these cards, you will see bindings and crows trying to help, or ravens trying to help unravel those bindings. And here you can just see the strands of his hair blowing free, the strands that would have bound him flowing free. The straps that he wears are adornments, like that jewelry on his wrist, or even the straps holding his jacket together, his laces on his boots. These are not constrictive kind of binds anymore. Now it's like, this is where I choose to tie my shoes. I don't feel trapped in this. And the wisdom of that, and I love how it's following that strength card, because when we find the courage to go into our fearful spaces, there is this level afterwards of King of Swords kind of energy where our minds go, because it's usually our minds that tell us we're afraid, right? It's our minds, it's the stories, it's the conditioning that society has been programming us with for many, many, many years. It's our ancestral lineage, but it's in our heads. A lot of it is in our heads. And I'm not saying there aren't scary things out there, but a lot of the time we make things scary because we tell ourselves a story around that fear. And once we step into that and we go, wow, that wasn't quite as scary as I thought it would be, or wasn't as hard as I thought it would be, and I feel so much better now, more peaceful, more calm, more centered, more grounded. That's the King of Swords. Now, let's be honest, another fear will come up, another challenge will come up, we'll find ourselves back in the pattern, but each time it gets a little easier to trust your heart, to push through the fear barriers, and then to find this King of Swords. And that's also because over time we develop mastery, which comes back to Saturn, about to turn retrograde during this week, comes back to this energy of Saturn and mastering in Pisces, very much mastering your emotions. And so I think that this is a very heady versus hearty kind of week that we're having, coming out of Gemini into Cancer. Gemini is air, Cancer is water. And then here's another heart literally on that card and on this card. So one of the answers also, when we have done this big process that the beginning of this reading is sort of indicating, that we find our courage and that we become more wise and grounded with it, we're starting to change our neural pathways by changing our patterns of operation in various situations. But then we need to rest and consolidate. It's like rebooting a computer. It's really tiring making changes. You have to be really, really vigilant of your thoughts, because if you stop, then you just default back into the old way. And of course, that's not what we want to do. And then again, this card also links beautifully to the Hermit card, because once we've rested our mind and we've rested our bodies, then we can sit in stillness and be reflective in a way that is healthy for us, finding our inner light, being contemplative, being meditative. But if we're exhausted and if we're wired and our nervous systems are really like frazzled, then sitting in silence, we just fall back into those old stories that say, I'm not good enough, I'm always alone, nobody knows me, the real me, nobody sees me, nobody listens to me, or whatever your inner narrative is. And that is why we are feeling restricted at getting into this beautiful positive aspect of the Hermit, which has this future focus by being very centered in the present. So I think our sort of focus this week will be to watch where I'm afraid and ask myself why and how would I normally react or respond, and let me do it differently. And then sit with sort of a satisfaction and a pride in yourself of, wow, I did that. That was tough, but I did that. And then let yourself feel tired because it was a lot, and let yourself rest and nest. And then allow yourself the space to enjoy your contemplation as you move into these new realms of practice. Thank you for your time. Have a beautiful week, and I look forward to being back with you next week.